Right. Going live here. Cut down my brightness here just a bit so I'm not so shiny. All right. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist, Rabyd Reflections live stream. Uh, Today is October 19th, 2024. The Brit version. Today, I want to talk about what is truth. That's the opening question, but I also want to talk about I recently had to ban presuppositionalist apologists from the channel, and I want to go over that a little bit and why that is. I also had somebody comment on biblical archaeology, and I want to talk about that and why that doesn't convince me anymore. So we have all that going on. So plus my own personal struggles. I have to explain something why some things are a challenge for me and some of the channel changes that I keep working on to make things work. But welcome, everybody. I appreciate everybody here. We'll see how big we get as time goes by. I was just on Captive Death's live stream listening to him. So there's just a lot of stuff that's going on in the atheist sphere. So welcome, everybody. I appreciate all of you. But I want to talk about what is truth and how do we define it? Because it gets asked so often. The recent part of it was somebody asked me, "What's your definition of truth?" What's going on? It's like, could you define what truth is? And I have a way of assessing what is true, I guess. To me, something is true if it conforms to reality and it has this ability, and the reason we know it conforms to reality is like there's a predictive power. Also from Michigan, Ann, welcome. So I'm sitting here right in good old Michigan myself. So but yeah, so truth to me has the way I know it's true is I can pick it up and go somewhere else and it's still true. It has a predictive power to it. I think this is why I appreciate science, because science really works on predictability. And Grand Rapids native, yeah, I am literally about an hour north of there on the crossroads between US 10 and US 131. So if you know what town is there, you know that's good old Reed City. So I'm sitting right in town right now. So it's the issue of what is truth, of course, is that we're always constantly modifying truth. And I think that's a problem for religious people. I think a lot of people that are religious want this concrete definition of truth. They want a capital T truth. And I just can't offer that. Yeah. And as adjudicated by predictive power. And I think Fred has put I like Paul Geo's definition as well. I think he has studied that a lot. Yeah, a lot of people have cabins up here. It's a Michigan thing. Everybody has a cabin around some lake in northern and western Michigan. So, but yeah, I like his definition. But I would probably also ask that, or add to it, that the way you know it has predictive power is somebody who's asserting the truth will also put up to me, a standard of falsifiability really adds to the power of truth. That if you can say, okay, what would falsify? Are there a lot of Finnish descendants in Michigan? Yes. I'm not a Finn. I'm a Norwegian, Swede, Danish descendant. So definitely Scandinavian. A lot of Germans here too. Michigan is very much like Northern Europe as far as climate and all that stuff, and that's why I think a lot of them settled here. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I don't know. There's a cultural thing in Michigan, and it doesn't appear in a lot of other places. But you have your home where you live down south, and then you have your cabin up north or in the Upper Peninsula or whatever. And so it's kind of one of those things that where people just it's a cultural thing where people get away from their regular life, go to another place, and they'll fish or hunt or whatever there, and then go back home. It really is kind of a cultural thing in Michigan. That's what made the COVID ban on travel in the summer made really bad for a lot of people because there was just they couldn't get away. Yeah, the Mackinac features. Yeah, the yeah, you spelled it wrong too, but okay. Uh, uh, yeah, there's a lot of words in Michigan that are spelled differently than they sound. So, but yeah, but getting back to truth, and that's just true. Uh, that has predictive power. The thing of yes, I know. I, hey, I get it. I'm not picking on you. It happens all the time. People, I can tell somebody's not from Michigan by how they spell Mackinac, because if they don't end it with a C, it's wrong. It looks like Mackinac, so with a C at the end. Um, so that's kind of where that comes from. But I, so I got in, this whole issue of truth became a debatable subject with a recent pre-supper that I had who wanted me to define truth. So I defined truth. Yeah, it's pop, not soda. I defined truth as the way we just did, as measuring the extent in which something has conforms to reality and is adjudicated by predictive power. And I added the idea of hey, it needs to have some falsifiability. The way you add to the predictive power of a truth proposition is if you add some way that it could be falsified and it can't be falsified, that gives it even more credence. And so I spent my time talking about truth that way in that terms. And the problem, of course, with that definition of truth is you're never going to get truth with a capital T. Okay, you're never going to get it with a big T. It's going to be small t. You're going to get some truths that we have and some truths that we don't. And there's certain understandings that we just go, I don't know. And it's, finding ways of understanding things changes. And the scientific method kind of lives on this idea of finding stuff that's predictive, but also constantly re-questioning it. And so that's kind of where I hang my hat more with that than just asserting things being true. And so I give that definition in this conversation, and the conversation's missing because I banned the guy. Just so you know, I took a few screenshots, but I'm not going to put them up. I'm not here to embarrass anybody or make anybody look bad per se. Uh, but how long was I pastor? Roughly 20 years, I would say. Assemblies of God for about 10, and I pastored an independent congregational church for about 10. So long time. I was a Christian from the time I was, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, and grew up in the church and became a minister and got degrees and all that stuff, Bible theology, all that jazz. But I'm having this conversation about truth with this guy, and all of a sudden he flips the whole thing, as most pre-suppers do, and saying, you got to prove the truth of atheism then. And it's like, oh, here we go. And it's like anybody who understands the way argumentation works is if you make a claim, it's your responsibility uh, to prove your claim. Okay. They always try to get us to prove the negative, and it's like, I just don't believe what you're saying. Okay, well, prove your non-belief. And it's like, I don't know, can you prove your belief? It's like the problem I've always had with presuppositionalist apologists on this channel, and every time I've reacted to them, they come here and they get all uppity about it. Okay, like yeah, you gotta prove your atheism, and it's like, how does that work? Okay, how do I prove your non-belief? I got a reaction video coming up to another pre-supper coming up, And people are going to probably say, well, that's unfair that you're going to react to them without letting them talk. I mean, you know, my basic issue is not anything other than the basic dishonest tactic of trying to reverse the burden of proof on me. And it's like, they haven't disproven like the existence of Zeus. They haven't disproven. And if I challenge them, well, have you disproven all these other gods? They say, well, no, I don't have to. They have to prove their gods. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like you have this special pleading box around Christian faith. And that's what they're doing. They're like, um, yeah, exactly, Rimmer. That's the real problem with pre-suppers is they're not interested in genuine interaction. Okay, I have a lot of theists who come here and comment, and they are welcome. Okay, because they're genuinely interested in having a conversation about belief versus non-belief, and I'm all for that. Okay, every time I've dealt with a pre-supper on this channel, and I've been dealing with them for almost 5 years now. It'll be my fifth anniversary of being on YouTube is coming up in January, but it's there is this real, they're not interested in a conversation. They're interested in winning the argument. And it's any technique that lets me say, well, they didn't answer me and I won the argument because they didn't answer me. Okay. And that has been what it is. So yeah, it's just, it's just been one of those things where every time I deal with these guys, every time I react to their videos, every time people come on here in our pre-suppers, they'll announce it to me, like it's the one guy. Yeah. And Christian James, it's like, it's not about winning an argument. It's about discussing it. Cause I tell you how human beings in general work. Okay. With things is we'll have a discussion about something, I'll read something or everything, and then I'll think about it later. And you're never going to convince anybody away from all of that in the moment. It just never has. Okay. It's not about, just talking about it. It's more about I've got to win the argument. I've got to convince people that my faith is true. And that's not about convincing it. It's just, if I get the atheist to admit I can't prove my non-belief, okay, because it's a silly thing to do, right? They'll say, well, I won. Christianity is true because you atheists can't prove your point. And that is a pre-supper. Okay. Okay. That's how presuppositionalists work. And it's by its nature to me the most dishonest form of apologetics. And that's saying something given all the rest of them. But it's really problematic for me. And after a while, I have to remember the goals of my channel. I am here to normalize atheism. Okay, so anybody presenting falsehood like a pre-supper does about atheism isn't helping that. I'm here to normalize deconversion and people who are deconverting and support them as they're on their journey. Okay, I'm not here to convince them. I will say that if you are having doubts on your faith, I'll reinforce them. Okay, but I am not here, and I'll push you over the edge if you're close there. But it's, I won't say that it isn't part of what I do, but it's just part of what I do. Okay, um, yeah, and so the argument in the pre-supper's arsenal about truth, getting back to the original question, what is truth? Is, later on in the conversation, and says, he goes, well, you haven't defined truth. I said, I just did literally 3 comments ago. Like, literally, I just laid out this definition of truth that I use and how I arrive at truth. And that's how it works. Okay. And, I had, I think it was Daniel who came on during when I did um, his video, okay, about atheism. He came on here and, he's like, well, I didn't rage quit the Kentucky Atheist. And I'm like, I was literally there and watched you rage quit. Okay. it's like, don't gaslight me about what I saw. I saw you literally get pissed off. You said you were pissed off and you left. Hey, asshole, good to see you. Um, and that's kind of, you know, it's like, what do I do with that? And then, of course, my most unpleasant engagements with pre-suppers were actually when I was doing the series on Jim Bob's arguments against atheism. And I won't touch his channel anymore because I just don't want to deal with him anymore. It's just silly stuff that he does. And I think he's more of a shock jock for apologists. Anything else, if yeah, I mean, I was there watching Azo when he rage quit, and then he'll come back. It's like the other characteristic of these presuppositional apologists that will deny reality or try to gaslight you into thinking that what you saw isn't what you saw. Um, so it's kind of that way for me. And so I now added to my list in my latest community post that if somebody admits they're a presuppositionalist, yeah, just block them immediately if you're a mod. Um, I don't need that kind of grief around here because they don't just harass me as somebody deconvert, because I still consider myself in the process of reconstruction from deconversion. And so I want to support that as well, right? Um, and so that's the issue for me. And pre-suppers make that difficult because they're throwing a lot of accusations at you that are not true. Okay. They're lying about what atheism is, they're lying about all this other stuff. Um, I think he's a pre-sup atheist, not a pre-sup Christian. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say with Fred. I love Fred for that very reason, is he's kind of unpredictable. I actually love him for that reason. Um, But yeah, so I kind of said, listen, let's add this to the list. I If people are deconverting, I don't want them harassed. I don't want them. Thank you, Jova. I appreciate that. Yeah, okay, okay. And Jova says, I think it comes down to one cannot win an argument if they care more about being right than they care about the truth. The truth will always win. I agree with that. I think that's kind of the issue because I don't think precepts are interested in the truth. They already think they have it, and they're not, and so they're just gonna just push that directs. So it's so I felt like the guy was just attacking me after a while. He's just trying to win the argument, and he's not interested in anything I actually have to say. And the other suspicious thing, and for those of you who are familiar, the username was suspicious to me because it had the same initials as another pre-supper that I've done video reactions to. Um, yeah, that also has a JB, in their name. And I was wondering, I actually asked Captive Desk on this one. Do you think that Jim Bob would use an alias and do that sort of thing? And he basically responded, I don't know, possible, I guess. It's like I I don't have a real good I had a real bad feeling about it, and I don't like usernames that resemble somebody else's anyway, so it's not a very good stealth move. But yeah, it just I've never had a good experience with these guys, and I think their apologetics just they want some sort of special pleading around what they do. Like if somebody who believed in Buddhism did what they did, they would cry foul, right? But they do it and it's okay. And it's very hypocritical by its nature. Okay. If you're going to make a claim, then prove your claim. Okay. Don't worry about other people proving their claims, prove your own. That'll give you enough work to do. That'll give you enough work. Um, so yeah, I don't know. There was just something shady about the whole thing. And you know, the conversation, the guy in the conversation is just like, I'm a pre-supper, you're in trouble now. And it's like, oh, I'm shaking in my boots. You know, it's like, there's just so much ego behind it. Okay, like you get to presuppose something is true, and everybody else has to prove you wrong. That's very suspect. Okay, it's like, you know, I'm an agnostic atheist. I always leave the door cracked open, and I don't get me wrong, I've said it before on Dawkins's scale, I'm a 6.969, one, because it's funny, and two, it's it's really a reflection of the truth. I'm very close to like saying, yeah, there is no God, but it's like every time I listen to the arguments against God, there's much like the arguments for God, there's a little bit of wiggle room. And I think as a skeptic, you have to be skeptical of yourself too. And I'm not against that. And I do challenge myself about what I think and believe all the time. But there's something about a group of people that sits there and says, I know I have the truth 100% and I'm not going to change it. Um, I don't know. I don't treat, I try to separate a person's ideas from themselves all the time. I really do. And when it comes to finding truth, I wouldn't say that, like, if a Christian says something about another subject outside of faith, I'm not going to automatically say, well, they're wrong about faith, so they must be wrong about that. That's, it's like, being a skeptic is indeed a good thing because it allows you to not be fooled. And I think the real problem I have with the apologists is they continue to try to keep people fooled. And that's my problem. If I have a respectful relationship with an apologist, which I do have a couple of those that are friends, it's like it's not. I'm more likely to listen to what they say. I think the real problem I have with presuppers is they just don't know how human beings work. Okay, and they're gonna like insult you, get in your face, call you a liar, and everything else, and then suddenly expect everybody to respect what they say. That's just not going to happen. Okay, if you want people to respect you, if if a theist makes a good point, I'll acknowledge it. Okay, um, trying to treat human beings as human beings is a very good point. Logan. It's the way it is, and I just have never experienced that with presuppers. I have never felt like I was being treated like a human being by them. Okay, they always come here, and I am an obstacle that they need to defeat so they can put a notch on their gospel gun. And I just don't have time for that. Okay. And I think a lot of people deconverting don't need the hassle of that. They don't need the bullying of that. Okay. The inherent bullying to that type of thing. So, to all my mods, if you feel somebody's a presuppositionalist and they're using those kind of tactics where they're asking people that are deconverting, you got to prove your atheism kind of thing, you're free to use your best judgment as to whether or not the comment deserves or the person deserves a ban for that. Okay. But I know that if I see it, I'm probably going to block them at this point because I'm done with it. Um, all other Christians are welcome here. I had somebody ask me, have you ever banned an atheist? Yes, I have. I had one guy go after a bunch of theists and he was just very insulting. He didn't really put up good arguments as an atheist either. And he was just being insulting and ad homineming. And I'm like, nope, you're gone. I don't need that here either. I am very much interested in genuine interaction. And usually that just doesn't happen. So there's that. So that's that, those two issues. What is truth and how that led to my presuppositionalist ban. Um, you're not banned, asshole. You're a mod. You're not banned. um, so that's kind of what I'm trying to stick with, and I'm trying to keep that tone here. I've got so many subscribers now and get so many comments. I just can't police them all anymore. So if something slips through, don't get all upset about that, but just, understand that we're trying for a certain atmosphere on the Rabid Atheist where we're genuinely interacting. And I don't mind theists who come here, just don't be a presupper. Okay. I don't have that time for that kind of nonsense anymore. It's really lowbrow apologetics, and I'm done with it. I want to talk about, somebody left a comment about, if you don't believe the Bible, go to these 4 cities in the desert near the Dead Sea that have ash. They've been burned by the power of God or whatever. The insinuation that's what it was. And here's my problem with biblical archaeology. When I was a theist, I was like, okay, I'm reading the biblical archaeologist, and then I go look at the scholar who is also in that area that isn't a biblical archaeologist, and they're saying two different things. And the consensus among the scholars is going over here away from the Bible. Okay. Every time. And a lot, I remember I owned a Bible once that had like all these archaeological finds that prove the Bible. And then when I started going through Bible college, I still had that Bible and I was going through them and I was double checking them and and it's like, well, except this isn't like hard evidence. Okay, it's more of a conjecture about archaeology and not actual archaeology. And what I began to realize is a biblical archaeologist is going in with the bias that the Bible is true, and that doesn't make for good scholarship. I don't want people to assume the Bible isn't true. I don't want. Uh, so there's just this. To me, I want something beyond your opinion and your presup that the archaeology is going to back up the Bible, which is what I got all the time. I remember sitting in an apologetics class, and my apologetics professor, who I haven't heard of since Bible college, and I think it's because he left the faith. Maybe, I'm not sure. But he made the opening statement like every time an archaeological dig is done, another skeptic dies to the Bible. The problem is, I've actually found the opposite when you actually look at archaeology, that archaeology is disproving the Bible. I think that's why a lot of archaeology now pretty much disproves the Genesis account pretty hard. It's really hard to have a worldwide flood when there are civilizations around the world existing at that time and don't seem to notice. Um, so there's that aspect. You also have the fact that there's no evidence for like Moses or that the Israelites were 2 million strong in Egypt or anything like that. There's no evidence for that at all, and the lack of evidence becomes pretty hard in archaeology. There's no art. There's all kinds of archaeological spades in Egypt, and we still haven't found the equivalent of a Star of David anywhere. At least I don't think so. And from that time period. So it's like I'm not. Yeah, the Sinai Peninsula is another one where they've done a lot of archaeology and they don't find any evidence for a group of people wandering around for 40 years, none whatsoever. And that seems really weird to me. So, the more I looked at archaeology, the more I realized that a biblical archaeologist is running with his Bible in hand first and then looking at the information, and that creates an automatic bias, and that's not a good thing. Uh, uh, well, well, the thing is, Christian, also though, you got to prove that God exists first, okay, for me to accept that statement. To me, all I have is the wisdom of man. Okay, I don't have the wisdom of God at all. It's not in the equation. Okay, because I haven't received good evidence that God exists in the first place. And I used to believe I think that's what bothers some apologists with me, because I already have used your arguments. I mean, I literally could probably have said at some point some of the things that a lot of theists say, okay, to my congregations, to people I talk to forums that I used to be involved in. When I was a Christian, I have every apologist, every Christian that's ever come here has usually used an argument that I at some time used myself. And I think that bothers people. Okay. I think it bothers a lot of Christians. And I'm sorry, those aren't convincing to me anymore because I realize their flaw. Okay. I realize all their flaws. it's why the philosophical arguments for the existence of God don't work for me, because I dismissed them as a Christian because I realized they were fallacious. Um, so, and then you look at the biblical stuff. Yeah, so it's is the foolishness of man. Okay. So I don't, so when I look at when people make comments like, oh, look at these cities that are in ash, I think to myself, you do realize that when people went to war back then, they used fire, right? That the ash could have been, some group attacked them and burned down the city. You do realize that, right? There's an alternative explanation. Yeah, I mean, asshole, that's a great quote, isn't it? From 1 Corinthians 25. But it's like, once again, the assumption is that God exists. Okay. And that's the thing about the Bible. The Bible assumes God exists. It never bothers to prove it. Okay. It never, there's an opening assumption about, in the beginning, God. That's the opening assumption of the entire Bible. Okay. It's never proven. There's a few attempts, but it's always, yeah, it just it's just it's just not going to work. Okay. So it's like, I can't, you know I could say in the beginning, Odin, or in the beginning Vishnu. Okay. And it's the same level of assumption. Okay. It doesn't really, um Go Herder's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, I've heard that one. I miss Douglas Adams, something fierce. I really do. I'm sure that's an expression he would have used. Um, but yeah, I don't understand how anymore. I guess it's because I've said it before. I've seen behind the curtain, and I can't go back. Once you find out that the Wizard of Oz is just the professor pulling levers, you can't go back to that. You can't go back to thinking there's a God. Okay, you understand that God is a creation of human beings used to manipulate others. Okay, and it's no accident that um, religion and government arise at the same time to support each other. I don't think that's an accidental thing at all. Because name me a verse of scripture that says, rebel against your government, rebel against your king. I can't find one. I don't know what's going on. I've never been, it's always, be obedient, be obedient, be obedient. And so the Bible has this inherent listen to the Bible, never question it in it. Okay. And I'm sorry, I can't do that anymore. Every time I read the Bible anymore, it's like, oh, this is wrong. That's wrong. Um, this isn't true. I've had people quote Romans 1:18 through 20 to me so many times I've lost track, and that this channel's history is. Um, and yet I always ask the question. I always say, well, that's how I know the Bible isn't true, because that's not true. Okay. Um, yes, God does honor obedience, and he'll even punish somebody who's disobedient trying to help him out. I think the Uzziah account where the guy tries to steady the ark because it's about to fall over, trying to do God a favor, and God still kills him, is a real interesting paradigm. Um, Yahweh's kind of a jerk, to be honest. He's a real bad character. Um, so that's kind of, my problem with that comment. There were a few other comments more recent about somebody, well, how do you explain changed lives? I'm sorry, every religion has a changed life story. I mean, Malcolm X, I think, credited Islam for his change in character. I've had Buddhists come to this channel saying, yeah, Buddhism changed my life. I used to be this, and now I'm a much better person. So if you're trying to say one religion is better than another at getting changed lives, you can't really do that. Um, it's a bad elite. Um, Remembers, that's so true. What most people don't realize about the Bible is the current rendition of the Old Testament is pretty much the the Israeli people just editing the crap out of all these different accounts they had. That's why the JEPD theory exists, because you can see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Okay, you can see this tradition that is definitely Jehovah, Jehovah, Yahweh, Yahweh, actually, and then you have this other tradition where it calls him Lord, 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 and this is where the contradiction, the two don't always mesh up, and they try to edit it, and it just doesn't work. So I have these people with that also come here with this stuff too. It's like, well, the Bible's the word of God. I said, which one? Because even within its pages, you can tell it's edited. Um, you have, and then you have these people like, oh, change lives of Christianity. I can count change lives in atheism. I know a bunch of atheists who have turned their life around. Does that prove their atheism is true? This experiential arguments don't work for me anymore, because you have to then say that I'm the only one that's interpreting my experience correctly, and you could be it could be it could be very different. So um, I don't know. That was another one. I had somebody on my video about how atheism has changed me. My five six things that actually how I've changed since I've become an atheist, which was a personal video more than anything, more for those of you deconverting, so you understand that you're not going like a bad direction, that you can actually be a better person by not believing. And they're commenting our way, and it's like, are you okay? Are you all right? It's this real condescending, patronizing bullshit, that bothers me. It's like, I just did a video how I saying I'm more right than I was before, and you're sitting there saying I have a hard time. And I'm literally through the entire video saying how it's better and not a hard time. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what else to do for you people. So there's that aspect of it. I don't know. It's been a weird week for comments. I know when I laid out my different things of what has changed for me. I know a lot of people had a problem with that if they were theists, so that's fine. Um, so that's and that kind of leads into personal struggles, going through changes. I always talk about my personal life a little bit from a deconversion angle, and I was talking about some of the changes to the channel. And a good friend of mine that's been around, oh, she knew me before I was the Rabyd Atheist, because I think she followed my blog, The Gray Wayfarer, for a while. And so she pointed out to me that I have to be very careful with this, because I have a tendency for um, self sabotage, so to speak, because I'll create these new ideas and then I'll drop other things that other people like. And I can't, I have a trouble maintaining consistency because of self sabotage. And this is a problem that I think, looking back at it, part of it's autism and bouncing around. I get bored with things really easy. And so I want something to be exciting. And I think everybody does. I think when I do it when it comes to Martin, to content creation, because I'm always looking for new stuff and things like that. And so I have a tendency to self sabotage. But one of my big one is procrastination. I think a lot of people have that, but it's a very difficult um, thing for me to stay consistent, because I find the excitement in the planning and not in the actual execution. Okay, the execution is boring, but the planning is pretty exciting. And so she reminded me of that. So I'm trying to be very careful here when I talk about what I'm changing and how I'm doing things. I'm trying to find a very consistent way that I can create YouTube content that doesn't do, it could be. I don't know. I have always struggled with this, Martin. It's like even when I was in the ministry, it was like, what do I do? I think that's why I preached in series, because then I was kind of forcing myself down. I've got to finish this because this is the way it is. That's why I do series on the channel too. And then I rotate them so I don't get bored. I think the biblical study thing is the most obvious example of that, rotating between When God Kills and Heroes of Faith and, Tongues of Fire. Rotating between those three keeps me from getting bored, but they're systematic. So there's a lot of that in there. Okay, uh, so I'm kind of trying to change things more into a method, and that means like certain videos are just not going to drop on certain days anymore. A video will drop when I get a video done. I'll post it for the next day and move on to the next one, and just have this. I'm trying to have this systematic routine of do that. So. Uh, that's kind of my personal struggles. I've been just absolutely going, cleaning my apartment to the nth degree, getting ready for winter. I don't know, I spent most of my vacation either cleaning or trying to deal with issues. So, and it's slow going, it's slogging because, then I get tired. But since the weather's changed, my energy level is up. I just got to focus it. So, my hypersensitivity isn't getting involved. And this is the reason I bring all this up is notice I haven't talked about God. Um, okay. Um, the one thing I have learned, and one of the things that's been most beneficial to me, and I've made more progress on this in the last 2 years, um, is that when you start dealing with your issues outside of God's going to fix it, and you start to look at it, okay, what can I do to help? Is this something I actually can get over? Is this a struggle that I actually can get past? And therapy has helped me a lot with that. And so is it a perfect solution to everything? No. But I don't think I ever am going to get to a perfect solution anymore. I don't think that that's even possible. So um so I continue, but I've made more headway since the autism hypersensitivity revelation. Oh man, about a year and a half ago now. And I've made a lot more headway. It's just, as I point out to my therapist, it would have been nicer to have all this when I was in grade school, in high school, and instead of when you're in your 50s. So it's like it's much more of a struggle when you're later and you're trying to create habits that will actually help you out and something that's consistently helping you out. So there's that aspect of it. And so I struggle a lot with that. Okay. Um, so there's that aspect of it. I noticed in the chat, we're all having a discussion about free will and choices. All right, I'm going to get real Christian here, and theologically based. Okay, when I was an open theist, I made the observation about free will and that is this: um, how free are your choices actually? Okay, because the open theist postulates that some things are inevitable because God has made them inevitable and says so. Um, and then I'm joining the conversation here for a little bit. But there are some things that you really don't have a choice about. Okay. And like when you're born, you don't have a choice about that. You don't have a choice about who your parents are. Okay. You don't have a choice. There's a lot of things outside of the realm that you can control. And this is where I'm going to get real stoic with you. Okay. Is that there's very few things that we actually have a genuine choice about from an observational point of view. Like does this person have a choice about it? Like if I walk up to the ice cream counter, there's 30 flavors. I suppose there's a choice about that per se, but I also have predispositions. Like I don't like certain flavors because I've tried them and I don't like them. So I may get up to the ice cream counter and eliminate 25 of them because I just don't like them. Okay. And there's others that I like more. So the idea of choice is our choices are very limited. And even when, if you engage the free will defense, okay, how much free will do you actually have is a very good question. Okay. So if God sets the parameter of accept Jesus Christ and be saved, and or don't and be damned, okay, that's not a lot of choices. It really is a very limited choice. Okay. And it's also not so much of a choice because there's a coercive element to it. Okay. It's like a robber coming up to you and pointing a gun in your face and say your money or your life. Is that really a choice? Hey, Cold Iron. Hey, Bren. Good to see you. Um, is that really a choice? The problem is that hell makes it a coercive choice. And in other words, I could say, no, I'm keeping my money and let the guy blow me in the head, with his gun, just fire and shoot and kill me. But that's not really a good choice. It's a coercive choice. Okay. So hell brings God with his gun pointed at my head, love me, believe in me, or else. And that's the problem. Okay. That's the problem with the free will defense, because is it really a free will choice? Okay. Is it really? Because if it was free, then there would be no, this is the consequence over here. This is the consequence over here. And there's genuine benefit to both choices. Okay. And the choice is genuinely free. Okay. Um, so that's the problem with the free will defense. Is it really a choice? Okay. All right. I'm speaking as a Christian because there's a Christian in the room, okay, that believes in the free will defense. Okay. And I have to remind everybody, you have to deal with people when they're deconverting or they're believers with where they're at. Okay. You can't assume they're just going to jump to being an atheist tomorrow. It's just not going to happen that way. That's not the way it works. Okay. Human beings make these choices gradual. But in the Christian doctrine of choice, what choice is there really? Okay, because the threat of damnation makes it coercive. And so it's not truly a genuine free choice. The moment you add coercion into it, it's not a free will choice. Okay, and that's a theological argument, by the way. That's why a lot of people dismiss the doctrine of hell and go to annihilation because of the coercive element of that particular version of the afterlife. Okay, even in Christian context, get away from atheist versus theist. Even in the Christian context, a lot of people will say, like my professor in seminary, Jerry Walls, with his defense of hell, he wrote a book, Hell, the Logic of Damnation, and comes to the conclusion that it would be illogical and uncompassionate for God to allow people to burn forever. He's like, no, that's not a forever thing. Okay, it can't be a forever because that would contradict God at being loving. Okay, take whatever you want with that. Theology is a funny thing anyway. But the point is, if you have a consequence like hell or annihilation being pointed as a gun by God, make your choice, that's a coercive choice. It's not free choice. It's a coerced choice. And that makes it no longer free. Okay. A genuine free choice of serve me or not, God wouldn't care whether you served him or not to the point of giving you a negative consequence if you didn't. Okay. And that's the problem I have with the free will defense. It's not really free. Okay. You can call it whatever you want. Everybody has a choice, but do they really? Do they really have a choice? Okay. Is it really a real choice? If I'm standing in front of the gate to hell and the gate to heaven, and God's there saying, which one do you want? I'm walking into heaven. Okay. Because the other part is not good. But that's just it. Is that, that wouldn't really be a choice, would it? Because the consequences of walking through the gates of hell are obvious. You're staring them in the face. You wouldn't do that. It's like, you know, do you want to walk into a building that's nice with a lot of amenities or one that's burning down? Okay. It's not really a choice. Okay. The negative aspects of the one side of the choice would repel you from the choice. They're coercive. They're pointing a gun at you saying you don't want to come here. There's danger here. Okay. And it just doesn't work. It's why the free will defense fell apart me as a theist. Okay. I'm like, I don't know if there's free will or I don't know if there's predeterminism, but I don't think that either one of them works. Okay. They both have logical problems in the context of Christianity. Okay. Mm. The fact that Jesus did all those things, though, is not historically verified. Okay. That's what you believe, but it's not there. Okay. And it's still not a choice. If the robber is pointing a gun at my head, okay, it's a coercive choice. And hell is the gun that God holds. Okay. And it's just not, that's a coercive choice. Okay. you know, and when I look at, your brain, I get that you want to believe in Jesus. Trust me, I understand the desire to believe. Okay. And it's very emotional. I get accused of being emotional all the time. I'm going to tell you, I had a lot of reasons to stay in the faith that were emotional. It didn't have anything to do with logic, and it certainly didn't have anything to do with a free will defense. Okay. As an Arminian, I believed very much in free will for a long time until I realized that heaven and hell isn't really a good justice system. Okay. It's an ultimatum. It is, as Jova Shade points out, it's an ultimatum. Okay. It's not a choice. It's like a country going up to another country and saying, hey, give us all your stuff or we're going to invade you and take it anyway. That's not a choice. Okay. That's an ultimatum. Okay. So there is no choice here when it comes to following God or not. You either follow him and live or don't and die. That's an ultimatum, not a choice. Okay. It's a threat. Okay. And to me, a loving God wouldn't have to make threats. Okay. He wouldn't have to do that. Okay. And he absolutely threatens you because it's not the devil that casts people into the lake of fire, because the devil gets thrown there by God and his angels. Okay. If you read the book of Revelation, God is not only responsible for hell, he's the one that actually condemns you there. I mean, you can disagree with me, but from my perspective, it's not a free choice. Okay. I think at this point in your own mind, Christian, I would just ask you to think about, why do I think that this is a choice when it's, how is killing people that don't want to serve me a loving act? Okay. How is burning them forever a loving act simply because they don't want to believe in me? Okay. I think it's something you should think about. And I think, the problem of evil is a real problem for theists. And the ones that don't take it seriously are the ones I don't have any respect for. Okay. And if you don't really consider what the doctrine of hell does from a God point of view, that is God's gun that he points at people like a robber points it and says, your money or your life, you have to really realize that that's the case. Okay. It's not a free choice. It's a coerced choice. Okay. And that's where free will loses it. It's not a free will choice anymore. Even if I believed in free will at that point, it doesn't. It's why I became more of an annihilationist at the end, because at least God wasn't burning people forever. He was just saying, well, you didn't believe in me, so you're done. And as an atheist who believes I'm done at death anyway, I guess I can accept that too. I have a lot more respect for the annihilationist than I do somebody who believes in the doctrine of hell. So, I absolutely know that life, dude, I literally kept myself in the faith with that very argument. Okay. For a long time. Okay. I had lousy churches in the Assemblies of God. Well, I'm just being persecuted for the cause of the truth, and I stayed in it because that's a very emotionally based, you're struggling through things, and that's proof of your Christianity. And Christianity isn't easy. And man, I kept myself emotionally in the faith with that argument for a long time. But that's not the issue of what is truth. Getting back to our original question, what's truth about the gospel? And the truth is, does God exist? I don't see any evidence for it. Is the Bible the word of God? No, it's a flawed and very human book. Did Jesus die on a cross? Maybe. Did he rise from the dead? That's very questionable. Okay, it has a very low probability of being true. Okay, and there's plenty of alternative explanations for all of that. So it's like I don't get that at all. So it's just it. I mean, at the end of the day, God makes the rules so He can change them. Okay, and so and it has changed them, and that's one of the proofs against the immutability of God. Because if God was immutable, He would have came up with a good standard from the get go and never deviate from it. But He does. So I don't know. I mean, you have to honestly ask yourself these questions, and so I asked those questions for a lot of years. I was a pastor for 20 years. I was a Christian for 40. I started questioning my faith 30 years before I left it. And it's because of the accuracy of the truth claims, not the emotions. The emotions kept me in. Okay. I didn't leave for emotional reasons. I struggled to leave because of the emotional reasons. So it's completely opposite of what most apologists say. When I hear William Lane Craig, say that people leave because they had a bad experience in a fundamentalist church, I had many of those, and I stayed in because of them. So there's, it's funny, how that works, and I hear him do that, and I hear others, oh well, they don't want to believe, they want to sin, and they have all these emotional reasons for that's not what's happening. And as long as Christians continue to not respect the reasons that they're given, I'm anti William Lane Craig. I feel sorry for him because he lies to himself a lot. Because he'll acknowledge that evolution is true, for instance. He will acknowledge what science says is true, the Big Bang. He doesn't question that. Okay. Um, but he tries to mesh it with his Christianity, knowing full well that it probably can't. And then, he does the low bar. We need to lower the epistemological bar for for truth and for Christianity. And it's like, oh, dude, if I was still a Christian, I would have had a heyday with that one. I would have been all over you. But I'm not, so I'm just like, well, thanks, Bill, for admitting it. So no bar now, yes, yeah. I mean, and it's like, if what you say is true, then it should meet any criteria of evidence, and it doesn't. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot, yeah, because he did say, well, if God says kids should be killed, then that should be it. It's like, and this is what I'm talking about when I say religion removes your human empathy, because you will literally talk about, well, yeah, all these children got drowned in the flood by God, but they must have deserved it. And it's like, what? It's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't get that. And yeah, he's pretty, I feel sorry for him more now than I hate him, because it's like he's so blinded by one thing. I have this inner witness of the spirit, and so therefore it's true. And no matter how much people point out to them that that's a faith based purely on feelings, he doesn't get off of that. He stays there. And I feel sorry for him because he's going to be looking forward to something on his deathbed, and he won't even be around to be disappointed. Okay. Um, so when people say that, Christian James is giving us, I know that that's true. And it's like, no, you don't know that's true. You have a feeling that that's true. Those are two very different things. I had a feeling that the Christianity was true. I didn't really know it was true. Those are two very different things. You can believe in something without knowing it's true. Okay. That happens all the time. I had that discussion with somebody who didn't know the difference between an agnostic and a Gnostic atheist. Um, that one, both of us don't believe, but one of us thinks that they know there is no God, and the other one says, I'll leave the door cracked open again a bit. That's kind of the difference. So I think I'll leave it at that. I'll leave you to think about it. All the Christians that are maybe watching this later to think about it. You need to really analyze your doctrines and say, if if God was being portrayed as, if this was a human being, what would we think about them? Okay, and if God doesn't live up to the criteria of justice of human beings, I guess, we have a problem. Okay, and that's kind of the basis for a lot of my series on the channel. Like When God Kills is absolutely based on the idea that, yeah, God is a God of love and care and concern. Oh, really? Here's a few stories that are told in the Bible that kind of contradict that. So that's kind of that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. I left the free will defense as a Christian, but I didn't really buy the hard determinism of Calvinism. So I kind of, with open theism, I was able to say, well, there's a lot of things out of our control and we don't have a lot of control over it. And there's very little I have choice about it, but there are some genuine choices in life. And that's kind of where I left it as a theist. And that's actually kind of my last theological position on it. So there's that kind of issue. Well, yeah, I mean, you can use feelings to confirm the Bible any way you want. Okay. Confirming the Bible, going back to our original question, what is truth? Is the Bible true? Okay, well, does it conform with reality? Historically, no. Cosmologically, no. Okay. About how human beings work, no. uh, so there's that aspect of it. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't have predictive power. I've gone over how prophecies are always ad hoc. That proved that prophecy. That's that. And what would falsify the Bible? I don't know. Just it's an unfalsifiable proposition that it's inspired by God. How do you prove the inspiration of God in the first place? And then how would you go back to that? I don't know. Okay, so the Bible is just in this nebulous area of what I would call mythology. Okay, I don't know. The Iliad gets some things right, historically speaking. Doesn't mean that it's not mythology. Um, I don't know. It's kind of that. So I think we'll see what happens in the future here on the channel. Got a few things on tap. There's I've got to deal with a guy trying to define atheism, says he used to be an atheist, and it's somebody I've reacted before, and now he's no longer an atheist. And he's telling us why the atheists don't actually exist, but yes, they do. A lot of double talk. And then I came out. So then I've got the another reaction. There's a preacher I saw talking about women's roles biblically. I thought that would be a fun one for some of you ladies. And then it's a short video, really short, but I'll have to unpack it. And then I've got, we're going to do more spooky Bible this week, and then also questionable witnesses should come out, and of course live stream next Saturday. More Rabyd Reflections. This has been a good discussion, though, guys. I like I said, I don't mind Christians and theists coming here as long as you're respectful of my humanity. That's good. But the moment you start immediately calling me a liar because I'm an atheist, that's just wrong. I don't call you a liar because you're a Christian. Okay, I think you believe some false things, but oh, Martin, you called it. Yes. Sir Sick just reacted to this guy, so you know exactly where I'm going with that one. I reacted to him before, and I'm going to do it again because he's propagandizing what atheists are, and I have to part of my mission is to take the misinformation about atheism and turn it on its head. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Probably the opening video this week, probably maybe Sunday, Monday. That's the thing. I don't have a set schedule. I have a set rotation of videos I'm going through. So that's kind of when they're ready to go. And I'm allotting a certain amount of time every day to work on YouTube. So when I get done with the videos for the week, I hopefully will have some time to make some changes around here. I'm hoping to add StreamYard hopefully for the next Rabyd Reflections, next live broadcast. So that's something that for you members out there, that's something that your money is going to. I've got reached a membership level where I can afford, a subscription. So I think that's where I'm going to head next. So there's that. And so there's a lot of good things coming in store. I just got to keep focused on it. And that's kind of my personal issue. I got to watch the self-sabotage and stay consistent. Thank you, Jova. Oh, that is so kind of you. A lot of people, you can experience, I don't have a lot of benefits to membership yet. The one thing I do want to do is get some merch going. I guess I would entertain comments from the members of what you would like to see on a t-shirt. But a couple of things I've already thought about is I think it would be cool to have on a cup, compassionate anti-theist. I think that would be a good one. I also have, yes, thank you. Yeah, Jova is very generous to the channel. Thank you very much, Jova. Your ASHO shirts. What am I going to do with that ASHO? Am I going to say, come make fun of ASHO every Saturday at 6? But no, I want to go. I think I'm going to reach out to Prophet of Zod and ask him if I can use his quote about me. He's not really that rabid. He's actually kind of chill, Prophet of Zod. Yeah. So I'm looking for ideas. It's one of the things I struggle with from a YouTube content. I don't have the technical expertise, and I'm always learning on the fly. So it's kind of like that. Yeah, make the name thing less easy to misuse. I get that all the time. It's one of those things that I really struggle with, is trying to, hate the belief, love the believer. Reversing it. Oh, that's beautiful, Michael. That's absolutely beautiful. I like that one. But yeah, just coming up with stuff like that. And then of course, the opposite side of the shirt or cup is, the Rabyd Atheist channel. Just kind of coming up with stuff like that. So there's that one, that aspect of it. And, I have this list of stuff that I've wanted to do. And I think just having a regular YouTube time and a regular writing time and getting back into that, I think is going to help a lot. I waste a lot of time self-sabotaging, and I know Jenna's probably not out there, but if she watches this later, Jenna, thanks for the comment. You really caused some real good self-reflection, and I think you're right. I have to watch the self-sabotage and all that stuff, because I often am doing very good stuff and I just get bored with it. And that's a real problem. And I gotta work on the boredom thing. So thanks for everybody for coming in. I think I'm going to call it quits. I've got some things I got else to do, including going back to Captive Death's earlier live stream and see if I can finish up listening to it. But he has a really good channel too. So if you guys want to check him out, he often does some pretty good stuff, and he's shouted out me enough times, so I'm going to shout out him. So Captive Desk, and I think I saw BS Lewis in here. He's a good channel too. So guys, check those guys out. I appreciate all of you. You guys are awesome. Thanks everybody. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're taking all your time, money, and opportunities and spending them on yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you all next time.